We have to talk about what's going on with fashion designers, why we're probably not seeing as much innovation as you would like, and really, is there a bleak outlook on the future for upcoming designers? Hi, my name is Jessica Couch. I'm a fashion and technology expert, and I go to conferences and do research so that you don't have to. Now, the reason why I think this conversation is so important is because I was speaking to an investor the other day, and he had mentioned he's working with a company that absolutely, makes their sales. I think they're doing about $80 million in sales, but they can't quite cross over to the $100 million mark. And for a lot of investors, this is discouraging because obviously they're looking for exits and unicorns. But now, in my opinion, I don't know if an investment in a fashion company and that level of pressure is something that makes sense in this day and age, only because of the changing consumer behavior that we're noticing. So right now is going to be a tricky time for new brands and fashion brands and retailers in general. I mean, outside of some of the issues that are already plaguing fashion, like retailers who can't pay some of the brands that are in their stores. We heard about that story, but what we haven't heard about is if it ever got better or if it will ever get better. And it makes you wonder, like, what is some of the reasons why some of our most notable retailers are doing bad and we're not seeing the traffic that we used to see? Now, right after COVID, there were a lot of analysts who wrongfully assumed that people would not want to go back into stores because of this issue with COVID. And so the idea of DTC was going to be just the end all be all for brands. And we're not going to get into that yet, but I do want to make the point that consumer behavior often shifts on and it swings kind of on a pendulum, but it's always going to correct itself, just like the market does. And so some of the bigger issues that are facing retailers right now, obviously low foot traffic is an issue, but we have to go deeper and really think about why. See, there's an issue around convenience, there's an issue around community, and there's an issue around products themselves. Convenience wise, it no longer seems very convenient to always go into a store, be disappointed, interact with people who are not enthusiastic with you being there. And that's on the consumer side. For the brand side, it may not be as convenient to have to work with some of these brands, not get paid, and have to do buybacks and things that are going to cost you because you no longer have control over foot traffic. And foot traffic is naturally dying in a lot of places because whereas when I was a kid, you gathered at the mall, that was the place where community happened. So much of community happened around consumption for me when I was growing up. So places like malls and shopping centers were where you would see your friends, you're going to buy stuff. But we have to remember that's because the internet wasn't quite ready for internet shopping back then. And so obviously you had catalogs and things like that, but the idea of getting products in a convenient manner still required you to go in store. And stores had the upper hand. Even how they merchandise stores was designed not for efficiency, but simply so that you can move around the store more frequently and hopefully buy more things. And this could be a really archaic way of setting up a store, but not much has changed since these setups. But what has changed is consumer behavior and what's available to consumers. Now, obviously, we're getting really spoiled with Amazon Prime, even if they were involved in a lawsuit or not, whatever. The idea that you can have 2-day shipping has really changed things. The idea is that you can go online and get things offline and they'll get shipped to you is great, right? So let's now discuss the dawn of DTC. So right after COVID, it seemed like direct to consumer was going to be a prayer answered for brands. And it was. A lot of brands saw a lot of value in skipping the middleman, having a warehouse, managing their warehouse, and using social commerce at the time to promote their brands. And during this time, it was a really genuine time to be in social commerce. You could get your products directly to your customer, and there was a better relationship between how much money you spent in advertisement and the return you would get through revenue for your business. Now, back then, I talked to a lot of brands and their formula was simple. The more money we pumped into advertisement, the more products we sold, and it was a directly correlated relationship in that way. But something has happened that has completely shifted that narrative. Now, nowadays, the competition on social commerce is pretty fierce. You're not only competing with other brands, and I mean bigger brands with deeper pockets who can afford to pay ridiculous amounts of money to occupy people's social media scroll, which is you really only have a few seconds at a time to wow your customer, to show them something they might like, and to keep them top of mind. When was the last time you checked your email and thought, wow, I'm so glad they sent me all of these ads in my email. It really helped me shop. You just don't do that anymore. So we became very limited thanks to social commerce, but the competition became even more fierce. That's my dad. I love him. And my mom's. So the competition became even more fierce for brands who now, if you're a brand and you have some restrictions around your budget, you may not be able to spend what is necessary to keep your brand top of mind for customers and to stay on their Instagram scroll. You're now competing with governments, you're competing with other companies. So it's kind of a crowded space to be in. And there's no guarantee that the money that you're spending is going to directly correlate with revenue. And so we're seeing a big problem for direct to consumer. And see, the problem is, it's not going to be as simple as, well, since that doesn't work, go back to wholesale. Because when you go to certain shows like Magic, that are traditional wholesale shows where you can go as a brand and you get all these accounts, we're not seeing the same amount of attendance at these shows because the fantasy of direct to consumer lured in so many brands. What brands are finding out now, though, is that it's getting extremely costly to advertise to your customer, to keep that customer engaged. And most of the time, your advertisements are absolutely getting lost in the ether of an ever-changing social media algorithm. Now we have some new consumer behavior and we have new ways of selling clothing that's coming into the market. So let's discuss TikTok Shop. Obviously, with TikTok being its own social platform, it is a medium to sell products to people because anything that captures your eye attention and keeps you focused on it is a great opportunity to shove a product in your face and remind you that you absolutely needed to buy something that you weren't thinking about. And the method that I feel like TikTok Shop has that is helpful is the fact that, one, you're going to see products no matter what. Once they know that you're interested in TikTok Shop, they are advertising to you nonstop. I also think it's interesting that their algorithm is anticipating what else you might want based on what it looks like crowdsourcing. So if you go out there and you look at a corset or you look at a faja or you look at whatever, they're going to keep showing you things in that category that speaks to it based on what other people are also purchasing. Now, this is a smart thing for them. It's aggressive for the consumer, but it absolutely works. Another thing that is happening as a result of TikTok Shop is we're going back to this idea of the QVC shopping, which if you're too young to know what QVC shopping is, ask your mom, your aunts, or your granny. It's a way like on TV, you could just turn onto a channel and you have people pitching you nonstop, aggressively selling you items, talking about the items nonstop and getting you to buy them. And because of their relatability, because they're drilling into your head why you need it, because they're constantly going, by the time, if you're watching it longer than 2 minutes, you're obviously now trying to debate whether or not you should make a purchase decision. Now, this style of marketing and sales is now entering the TikTok universe. And in places like China, they have these what I call farms of where there's nonstop influencers showing you products every minute, every second. I think one of the biggest influencers, she just like pulls something up for a couple seconds and then goes to the next one and people go crazy and they buy it. Now, I'm not saying that we should take that as a cue of what to expect in the US, but we should certainly be mindful that there are new ways to shop and purchase clothing that we all have to catch up to, especially brands. But let's go a little deeper. So brands are going to have to be more innovative. They're going to have to get deeper with their community, and they're definitely going to have to really go hard in not only keeping the current customer base that they have, but perhaps rewarding those customers to keep them top of mind and to utilize those customers to build community for them. And so this is kind of the tools that we're building with Looks.ai. And so we're launching on Shopify so that you can obviously turn your customers into some of the best salespeople for you and advertise in that way. And so be on the lookout for what we're doing. Shameless plug. I know that's fine. But I will say that it's going to take a lot more for brands who are newer or smaller, and maybe not some of these mega brands, to be very clever about how they're going to match people to product. One of the things you absolutely have to do is hone in on the community piece. And when I say community, think Skims. Skims has a whole community dedicated to Skims products, and they know exactly what that community is looking for. First, they started off solving a simple problem, similar to the one that Spanx was solving, but for a more niche group who were following certain celebrities and wanted a certain vibe. They did really good with solving that problem. Then they expanded their offerings into different categories once they had the trust of their consumers. And that is exactly something you need to do as well. First, double down on your community. Second, figure out exactly what problem you're solving. Now, I've been saying this for years and people are like, well, how does fashion solve a problem? And like, that's just not the type of business we have. If you have a business and you want to be successful, you absolutely have to figure out what problem you're solving. This is really simple because everything that you're going to do after that has to speak to solving that problem. And if you're not thinking about your brand or your product as solving a problem, then you're most likely don't have a good enough strategy and you're going to waste a lot of time and money and find out that people are not interested in you. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. You can use Perplexity or any AI that you want to do some case studies on brands that solve problems for customers and figure out what they're doing based on what you're not doing and put it together yourself. Otherwise, take my advice and understand that it won't be impossible for brands to succeed, but you have to be more clever. You're up against changing consumer behaviors. You're up against an algorithm that's not meant for you. You're up against new sales channels that you have to get used to and have visibility on. And then you absolutely have to hone in on the community aspect. If you're not able to do that, I don't think you'll be successful. And we're not even in the conversation yet of having technology of some sort. But obviously things like TikTok Shop count for a type of technology, and other things of understanding the algorithm, how you're going to post, how you're going to advertise. All of those require a certain amount of data analysis so that you can continue to get better. So if that's something you're interested in, reach out. And let's figure out how to match your products to the right people in a better way. Otherwise, just stay tuned and I'll keep bringing you news about what's going on, how it can help you, and what you need to stay afloat.